I'm doing well. You could see, can you hear me, see me? Everything's good?
Yeah. It's like slightly fuzzy, but it's all good. It's fine. It's cool.
The audio is working completely, right? There's no issues or anything like that.
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, David or INVIDA, welcome to the Nightlife podcast. It's good to have you on the show. How are you feeling?
Thank you. Yeah, doing good. Just before we get started, are you yeah, just tell me how this is going to work, what you'd like to do, and then we can launch into whatever
Yeah,
you're.
no, definitely. So, I'm just gonna chat a little bit about your history, how you sort of started getting into the game, how you got started.
Dope.
Um, and we'll start from there.
Dope. And are you Mike or Anand?
So yeah, my name is Anand. I put
Gotcha.
Mike as like my email name.
Dope. Yeah, well, just before we dive into the actual podcast thing, it's nice to meet you and chat for a second.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to have you. I know you've been busy, dropping a new album and all that. So
Yeah, I've got always got a bunch of stuff going on, which we can dive into. But and you're a promoter.
yes. So I'm actually a nightclub promoter. I've been a promoter for about a year now. I know you're performing at Lavo. Lavo is one of the spots that I
Yeah.
promote. I'm usually there every Thursday. One of my partners, he works there on Saturdays. I used to work there on Saturdays. I also promote for Marquee, Somewhere Nowhere, Nebula, Starchild, PhD, Tau. So all the Tau group spots and all the big names, including Nebula and Somewhere Nowhere, I promote for.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's I love being a promoter. You get to meet so many cool people,
Yeah.
and one of the reasons why I want to do the podcast because I know you DJs like are always up to some cool stuff, and everyone has like their own unique story, and I feel like it's something that people would love to know more about. So,
Absolutely, man. I'm going to Lavo and Tao tonight actually with my friend is DJing at Lavo tonight. EJ?
oh, okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Are you gonna be there?
So today, I actually have to meet with some business partners of mine.
Gotcha.
So, but the last Thursday I was there and it was absolutely crazy. I'm there like every 2 weeks or so.
Cool.
Because I mainly work like the weekends, Saturday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
But Thursday is more of like a once in a while type thing.
Dope. Great.
But Thursdays is fun. You're gonna enjoy it a lot over there. It's very hip hop vibes over there.
Yeah,
So,
no, it should be a good time.
and you're performing there on Saturday, right?
Yeah, I'm there on Saturday.
Is it your first time performing at
Yeah, my first time performing at Lavo. I've been there, a million times as a guest, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. So tell me, like, what made you first get into being a DJ?
So I started DJing, doing a lot of private parties and whatnot here in New York after I basically transitioned into dance music because my original background is as a pop producer, songwriter, and mixer. That's what I did in the very beginning. And then I was in Europe. I got really interested in dance music, started DJing, started producing, and then I launched into the live show and all the releases and the artist project.
So initially you were producing for a while. So how long were you doing that for?
Yeah, man. I have been producing about like professionally about 12 years.
Jesus Christ. So
Yeah.
you're a bit of a professional before you even started the whole DJ game.
Yeah, man. The DJ thing is kind of the most recent part of my career. So it's probably the most exciting. It's definitely the most fun. I think it will be the most lucrative, but it's also the newest. So that's really cool.
Okay. And how long have you been a DJ for?
Yeah, I've been playing since yeah, about 4 or 5 years.
Okay. I
Yeah,
see.
the thing was that COVID happened right in the middle of that, right? So I
Uh,
like I started as a hobby. I started doing a lot of parties. I was doing gigs here and there, and then I launched my dance music project and started releasing. And the goal was at the beginning of 2020 that was going to be the year of like, okay, I had all these releases planned and we're going to like coincide it. My management had like lined up a bunch of gigs and all that shit. And then of course, 3 months later, that all, fell apart. So I kept doing the releases because that was the easy thing to do. And then the live, the live gigging and DJing moved then back into focus, whatever, like year and a half ago, since things have like gotten under control with that.
Uh-huh. So did you always have a manager, or was that something that, you started doing later?
No, I signed with a manager, about that time. So whatever, like 4 years ago. And I was always working freelance. I was always working for other people. I never had done my own, my own artist project before. And I met this guy at a label who I'd sent my music to, an A&R, introduced me to this manager, and this guy was basically like, he was listening to my two demos. It came with these two finished, pretty finished records ready for release. And he was like, why have you not like done this before? Like, what are you doing working for other people? Like, you should do your own, like, build your own brand, become your own artist, do your own thing, because you can fucking kill it. So that's exactly what I did. So he signed me and helped me launch all of that. And that was the first time really working with a manager.
Okay, and that was 4 years ago, you said.
Yeah.
Wow, it's crazy how time flies. You know what I mean?
I know, it's crazy. You're like, hey, ask me how many years ago it is. I'm like, okay, 2023. Yeah, when was that actually? Yeah, about 4 years ago.
Okay, so 12 years. You've been a producer. What was that like?
It's been awesome. I mean,
Did you always want to be a music producer, or how did you?
I when I was growing up, I always loved music, and I played piano, I played drums, I played guitar. I was like in a couple bands, and I was really into a lot of rock. That's like really what I grew up around.
You were a rock and roll kid.
Yeah, I was. And I loved like punk rock, and I also loved like Dr. Dre, and I loved a bunch of different things, but probably rock was first and foremost. And I remember it was like a year before, like when you're trying to send out your college applications and everything, right? And I was like, what the hell do I really want to do? Like, I can't really think of anything other than music. And I was like, well, I guess I should just do music of some kind. And I had always fucked around with, like, I had turntables at home, like vinyl, nothing fancy, but whatever, just like didn't matter, right? And I had a mixer, and I had a bunch of old records, and I would like fuck around with it with my friends and like record loops into the computer and like add drums to stuff. And I was like, well, production was always interested in me, because I also had a friend who was, he was recording bands. And so I used to hang out with him a lot. So I had those two things. I was like, yeah, let me just do this. And so that's what I chose, and I went to school for it. And that's how I first got into it, basically. And like after that, I was working as an engineer primarily. I wasn't really producing. I wasn't really like doing the creative side of anything. I did it for a while, long enough on staff where I was like, okay, I've learned a lot. This has been great, but now I want to go and produce. I really want to like be freelance and actually do the creative things. And that's, of course, the most fun, right? Is when you're being creative. It's a high.
If your favorite thing to do is to just create music, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, bringing it into the live realm as a DJ, and you see people reacting to it, and you start realizing, like, all music just comes down to vibration and energy, and you can have that in speakers, you have that in people, you have that in a room, and that's really cool about playing live, is seeing that reaction.
Yeah, no, totally. Working with the crowd is probably one of the more interesting things that I think DJs do. especially with their music, because it's not just playing the song, but feeling what people want to hear too. So that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And and like even if you just as a DJ, since I've started to play out, listening to the same playlists or listening to the same records that I've always listened to, I perceive them differently. And like I understand, the energy levels are just a lot more clear to me since, learning how to read people and seeing what people react to and kind of imagining how would that work in a room? Like, are people going to move to that? Are you going to lose people? Like, what's the vibe? Rather than just being, oh, I love that melody. Like, I love the drums. I love the rhythm. Like, that's great. But when you start to think about how it is, how it affects people and how it touches people and uplifts them or makes them whatever, it's a whole different side to music, which has been very cool.
Sure. So I do want to get into the DJ aspects, but first, you mentioned a little bit about you doing playing instruments since you were a kid. How old were you when you touched your first instrument?
Like my mom made me play piano very first, and I was pretty young. It was probably like I don't know, 7, something like that, 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, I hated it. I was like,
really, you hated it? That's a surprise.
I mean, I didn't hate piano, but I hated having to practice. I hated the regimen of like going to a weekly lesson, all that. I enjoyed just kind of fucking around for sure. But my instrument that I really loved, which probably makes sense why I transitioned into dance music, was drums. And like drums were the instrument that I could just sit down at and play from like day one. I mean, wasn't necessarily playing anything crazy, but I had the natural coordination and the natural rhythm. A lot of people can't do that, right? It takes a specific kind of coordination and feel. So the rhythm was always my favorite, aspect was drums.
Interesting. It sounds like your parents were also musical people.
Yeah. My dad plays guitar, sings a little bit. I mean, not professionally, but I always grew up around it. Like we'd go camping. He'd bring his guitar, and my mom always played piano, and she sang. She still does sing in some choirs, some choruses that like tour around. So yeah, definitely music in the family. My grandfather was a pretty well-known violinist, so that runs in the blood.
Yeah, it's a whole family of musicians. Did your parents ever perform in front of you, like together?
No, unfortunately not. They weren't really performing much, professionally, and they also separated when I was, young. So no, not performing together, but always like in a hobby environment. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it sounded like there was a lot of musical background that you had. It's crazy that's both your parents and some of your grandparents are also into that. So
yeah, man. Yeah, it was more, sitting at home in the living room, like, listening to music, playing along with it, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
But it's really fun. It's really funny. My mom actually performed at Carnegie Hall last year with her chorus that she's touring with, and we're joking around like she made it to the big leagues, man. Like Carnegie Hall, shit.
Yeah, no, she's a professional.
Yeah.
Anyone at Carnegie Hall is a legitimate professional. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, this New York City traffic is crazy over here.
Yeah, no worries. New York City, it's always like this, Are you from New York or?
I'm from upstate, from Buffalo originally.
Okay.
Yeah, so I moved down here after college.
Is that where you started your career?
Yeah, exactly. So I moved down to New York I had like 3 different internships the same summer. I was, between my 3rd and 4th years of college. And started off here. I had those internships. I got a job offer at a studio kind of by, randomly just fell into my lap a few weeks before I was supposed to move back. And I decided to take it. So I dropped out, took the job, and stayed here in New York. And that's what gave me my start in the industry.
It was a music editing job, or what were your responsibilities?
There's a large analog studio here in New York. I think it's still in business. And it's one of the oldest analog studios in the country. and I was an assistant, and then I became an engineer. So when you're at a studio like that, you do everything from setting up microphones and doing mix recalls and all the technical things, but you also, of course, you still got to someone's got to get lunch for the people. It's like a small team, right? So the guy at the bottom does everything. So yeah, I worked my way up from that.
Okay, so you pretty much, you had a huge background when it came to equipment, the editing, the post processing, and all of that, including like the musical expertise before you even thought about the whole being a DJ or anything like that.
Exactly right. Yeah. So that's why I said that. Like I've kind of moved through like pretty much every genre and every entity, like every way that you can do music. I've pretty much done it, and the DJing is the newer part. So, but I think it makes sense, because if you're a DJ without having all that background, not that you have to have that background, but there's something very nice about having all that background, right? And then you take that with you onto the dance floor, and you understand music and like different genres and different feels. I think it makes you allows you to create differently.
Okay, and considering that you're from Buffalo, I thought it would be kind of difficult, finding a music engineering opportunity over there.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo itself does not have a lot going on musically. So, I moved down to New York after college, and that's where I've stayed. Other than being in Europe, I was in Europe, but like, yeah, Manhattan, New York City, for sure. One of the epicenters of everything, including music.
So when you started your music engineering thing, that was in New York. That was not in Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly. It was in New York City. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. That's what I said. So after college, I moved down to New York City, and
Oh, so
that's
you've
right.
been in New York for a long time then.
Yeah. I've been here for a long time.
And how long were you in Europe?
We were in Europe 6 years. Yeah, about 6 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a long time.
Yeah, we did Barcelona, London, and Vienna. We lived in all three. I say we, it's my wife and I, who I met here in New York. So she's from Europe. So
Interesting.
So yeah, we moved over there together, and it was an adventure of a lifetime. It was amazing. I had never been to Europe before, and yeah, I was like, let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Okay, no, I definitely want to hear that, the whole Euro tour and all that. But we'll start with New York, since that's where your career really began. So in New York, you come down after college, you start your job with the analog company. Is that correct?
Yes, it was an analog studio called Sear Sound.
So what was that like, getting started with them, figuring out like what you wanted to do? What did that process look like?
It was yeah, I can't think of one word to describe it, but it was great. I mean, so that studio was very popular for all kinds of jazz and all kinds of the more organic pop. So, when I was there, I had a chance to work with Norah Jones, Sting, Yoko Ono, a lot of these like kind of like older generation.
Yoko Ono is huge. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, legendary artists. Yeah, we did Yoko Ono's album there, one of them, and because it was a small team, I was basically like the second at some point while I was there. I was the second one in charge. So my boss was the one doing the main engineering, and I was his right hand man. I was like the assistant. I was doing vocal overdubs. I was setting everything up and all that. So yeah, I worked very closely with Yoko Ono, and also with her son Sean Lennon, because he was there, as a guest musician for a lot of that. So yeah, we got a lot of people in like that, and so during my time there, I had the opportunity to connect with and learn from a lot of really interesting, really influential people. So that was very special.
Okay. And is there like like a dummies 101 sort of explanation on like what you had to do or what your day-to-day kind of looked like as a sound engineer?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you
Like
have
I'm
to.
sure I won't understand the specifics, but like kind of like a high level view on how it's like to do your job as a sound engineer.
Yeah, I mean, in that realm, where it's mostly acoustic instruments being recorded, everything, was capturing musicians' performances in a room. So you'd have to know who was going to come in, like what was the project we're working on. Okay, you've got drums, two guitars, bass, piano, and you've got a singer. So you knew that ahead of time, and you had to figure out, okay, where are we going to put them in the room? What kind of a sound do we want? So what kind of microphones are we going to choose? How many songs are we trying to record? Are they here for a week, or are they trying to do like 5 songs in an afternoon? And all these things kind of affect what your plan is. So you have to plan that out, figure out how you're going to approach the project. And then, yeah, you got to set everything up, and then actually record it. And on the personal level, you have to, not necessarily as an assistant or as an engineer, but as a producer, you definitely have to pull performances out of people, right? So you've got to make sure that people are on their A game. You got to make sure that performances are correct, that you've got what you need when you leave the studio. If you're recording a live band, for example, like maybe you got to do 3, 4, or 5 takes. Then you got to listen and decide, okay, well, I think, take 3 had like the best energy, but there was some mistakes in it. So like now we got to go fix those things. And, so you have to be listening to that for that, and you have to catch it. And that's, obviously that's kind of the challenge, now more, modern top 40 pop or hip hop, or it doesn't even really matter. Anything you hear on the radio for the most part now, yeah, it has like a live aspect to it, but it's like a lot of it is created digitally in a computer. So yeah, you might have some live instruments there, but that's often, somebody like myself or, another producer or team of producers like making beats in the studio, synthetically, and with, using different computer plugins and whatever, and then adding some live instruments to it. And that tends to be more like the producer role there is like really creating, as opposed to like the live band setting where the producer role is taking control of the musicians and guiding them. You kind of like, you know what I mean?
Do you feel like nowadays people are more, or at least artists are more dependent on sound engineers than back in the day?
Yeah, well, I think it's different. It's different roles. Like now, producers and producers, sound engineers now is kind of like the same word because everything is being done sort of synthetically, and the producer is the one usually. Now I would take like whatever Dua Lipa, doesn't matter, any pop star that you can think of. The producer pretty much like wrote most of that music, made it happen. They programmed the drums, they programmed keyboards, they recorded stuff. Maybe they had some session musicians come in, but the producer pretty much like gave birth to the whole idea. Whereas back in the day, if things were more band based, the producer was in charge of like, he kind of had to play the musicians as if they were instruments. So the artists were still like dependent on the sound engineers for sure, but in a different way. They were not dependent on the sound engineers, producers to like create the musical ideas. They were dependent on them to be the executive producer role, right? Like saying like, okay, we're gonna put this guitarist in the room with this drummer and this bass player because these 3 people have like a really cool combination. And that was it was dependent on them, I think, very much, but in a different way.
Interesting. So, in your experience working for that company, what
Yeah.
were like the most interesting artists that you worked with that you feel like There was a story that stuck with you over the years.
I mean, so many interesting people for sure, but I think one of the most interesting experiences for me personally was, and this happened with a number of different sessions, but there's this band that we had that came in. They're called the Scissor Sisters. They're pretty famous, and that's maybe not so much in the U.S., but they're pretty big. And they came in for like a week to record sort of the first, like the basic tracks, it would be called, like the basic rhythm tracks of like their whole album. And then later on, they were going to go to the producer's studio in England and like replace a bunch of the sounds and everything. But they were with us for kind of like the very first, the first recording of a lot of things. And the first thing that you usually do is the drums. So they had like whatever, a week or two to record drums for 8 or 10 songs, something like that. So you basically you're taking your time with it at that point, right? You're focusing really on like, what do you want these drums to sound like? And we had this guy came in with like, I don't even know, he filled the whole live room with different drums, like different snare drums, kick drums, toms, everything, set everything up. And I remember, the drummer and the producer and the engineer like auditioning like different snare drums, different kick drums, like different things for each song, and like figuring out, okay, like what do we actually want these drums to sound like for this song. And then it was it was an incredibly detailed process, but it was really interesting to see that level of detail, because myself now, and anyone who produces dance or hip hop or pop, you're doing that when you're creating, but like you're picking samples, right? You go online, you find some really cool sample packs. You're like, oh yeah, I like this snare drum, I like this kick drum, it sounds big, it sounds punchy. So we were doing that on an organic level in the room, like choosing the actual fucking drum. And then you got to choose how you want to record it. Like, do you want to record it with like some distortion on it? Like, which microphone do you want to use? There's so many options. So because when modern producers now are just making a beat, you're listening to samples that sound great, but someone's already done all that, right? Someone had to create that shit from something at some point, whether it's synthetic or organic, doesn't really matter. But watching it like evolve in a room was very cool.
So when people start with an idea,
I lost you. You there?
One sec, am I back now?
Can you say something?
Test. You can
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. What was the last thing that you heard?
You said when someone, and then.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So when someone like wants to create a new song, or say you want to create a new song, do you start with the words? Do you start with a beat you already have in your head? Or is there maybe sometimes you have nothing and you want to figure out something out of the blue? What is it? Maybe for you, if that's probably the easiest, since you have experience with yourself, or maybe like if you want to talk about some of the experiences that you've had working with other people, how they made beats.
Yeah, I think there's definitely different ways to do it, and they can all be great. I think it's an interesting question. People ask that all the time, like, how do people write a song, or like how do you actually create something? And I think it all comes down to the energy in the room, and is there like a very specific kind of goal for the session or not? Or are we just kind of like feeling whatever? So sometimes it's really fun to just make something from scratch, right? And like you get so myself and a vocalist, maybe another writer in the room, and you sit down and nobody really has any idea what they're doing, but you say, okay, well, let's make something like how's everyone feeling today, right? Like what's everyone going through? And that's a conversation that actually I think happens in a lot of sessions when there is not a very specific predefined like goal for that day, because you got to capture what people are feeling, people's energy. So say everyone's like, well, we want to make something, let's we're feeling pretty good, it's like about to be summertime, and like someone just like, I don't know, someone just went out last night, had a really good time, someone else about to go on vacation. Okay, let's make something fun and upbeat. So then just kind of like jamming out, trying out different sounds. Someone will start to play a chord progression, usually probably me. I wear multiple hats. Like I write lyrics, I write melody. The only thing I do not do is sing. But I will help write all those things. But usually I think in its most organic form, the songwriting, it just kind of happens like that. So someone will start playing chord progression, and then someone will start. We're usually running like a voice memo all the time on someone's phone, and then start humming melody ideas or whatever. Like, oh, this could be a cool verse. Like, yeah, I like that. I like that melody. Like, what was that? Do that again. Like, let's develop that. See where that goes. And then, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. Let me work on some drums. Let me add some rhythm to this thing instead of just chords. You kind of build it out little by little from there. So I think that's definitely the most organic way to create something. It happens a lot. It can also be nice to just create tracks yourself on your own, which most producers will tell you they love also. So I'll have a library, and I have a library of like beats, tracks, started, not necessarily finished. Some of them more done than others. Doesn't really matter, but just like things that I can, if I want to, I can hit play at the beginning of a session and say like, let me play through some beats. Like, do you guys like these? Like let's see if one of these resonates with the people that I'm writing with, and then we can just write over that, because it's very fun to just create when no one's listening. Also, because then you're not scared to try shit.
No, definitely.
It's much different when you're with people than it is when your guard is different, right? So
okay.
And sometimes people walk in with like a voice memo. I've had sessions where like the artist shows up and is like, I had this idea while I was getting out of the subway. I like hummed it into my phone, and then we'll use that as a starting point. So there's not really one way, but you have to choose the way that feels correct in the moment.
Okay. No, that's very interesting, because one of my friends, he's actually a rapper, and one of the things that he does when he's writing new music is that he'll also do a voice memo. Well, he'll hum the beat, and he might not even have the words, but he'll just hum the beat that he wants to do, and then he'll come up with the words later. So it's interesting that you do something similar too.
Exactly. Yeah. Some people will definitely do that. And, there's a whole, like, everyone's different. Like some people really want to kind of create the music first, the instrumental. And then other people, they're very melody driven. So like they'll get the idea for the melody in their head first and then create the music around it. And some people even yet still is like just like lyric driven. Like I've also had people show up with like kind of a poem and be like, here, like let's write a song about, like, let's incorporate these lyrics, let's figure out a melody for it, and let's figure out a music, like, instrumental that complements it.
Okay, so you were talking about earlier about how one of the more interesting experiences you've had with that the analog company was where you dealt with an artist that was doing drums. Is that because you also love drums?
Yes, that was definitely part of it, because they had these like all these really cool vintage, kick drums, snare drums, and everything. So definitely was a big part of it. Same thing with guitars, though. I mean, I've seen like we had we were not recording U2. U2 was there working on, they were like writing music for some musical. I don't remember exactly what they were doing there, but they were there on one floor, and on the other floor they had their whole live guitar rig set up for U2's guitarist, The Edge, and they were like basically just kind of doing maintenance on these guitars and amps to make sure that they were ready for tour. It did not really have anything to do with recording, but it was there in our live room, and it was so cool because the guitar tech who's in charge of all that stuff, right? He obviously has to know how to play all these songs. Like he's the one who has to go through and make sure all the sounds are correct and all the. It's very complicated for a band like that to go on a tour. Like there's a million things have to line up in the right way. But they did the same thing. The same thing that I was describing earlier with the drums and the recording process. They were doing a similar thing with all the guitars and all the guitar tones and all the guitar amps and pedals for U2's live show. That was pretty cool to see that as well.
How long were they in the same building as you for?
They were there like about a week.
Oh, right. So they were just working with you guys to get their album done.
Yeah, no, they were not recording an album. They were working on some. They were like co-writing some project. U2 was part of something for, I think it was a Broadway musical, but I was not on that floor. I was the floor above, and the floor above was where they were launching. They were just using the space really to get ready for their tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were working on like a lot of cool, interesting stuff with them. Were they like the only company in the game, or it sounds like they were definitely one of the main players?
Yeah, the studio is one of the largest ones in New York. There's a few others, but yeah, they were one of the biggest. They had like a huge microphone collection. Like I don't remember how many, 200 or something vintage microphones. It was crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Old equipment, like shit, like very very old vintage stuff. It was cool.
Okay.
Then at some point it was time to like go off on my own too and take what I learned and like implemented it for myself, which was the next phase.
Yeah, and I guess since they had so many instruments, that was really useful, especially with dealing with so many different sounds.
Exactly.
You could play a lot and choose from a huge library.
Exactly, yeah. And I could use the studio too after hours. Like if there was no session, like I could come in and work on stuff. So that was pretty fun.
Okay. So, and also, is there like anyone famous that was really interesting or stood out to you during your time there?
I think Yoko Ono definitely was very interesting.
Yoko Ono would be one of the big ones.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And I spent a lot of time together, not necessarily one-on-one, but eating in the same room and all that, and talking. Definitely a lot of interaction there. Yeah, and Sting also. Sting was there, and he's a very very nice, very chill guy. I mean, he gave me some of his soup one day.
Really?
Yeah. He had he showed up with because he was writing music. We were not really doing much recording. He was kind of like recording demos, and he had brought his engineer. All these people, they tend to travel with their own engineer, right? So wherever they've got to fly, their guy flies with them. And it was my job to make sure everyone was comfortable and make sure everything was working and set up. The engineer doesn't know how the studio is wired or whatever. They just got off a plane, so I have to. They tell me what they want to do, and I make it happen essentially. And but it was it was a very intimate setting. It was basically just me, the engineer, and Sting. It was because there was no band involved, so that it was nice because I had a lot of one-on-one time with them. And yeah, Sting would just show up because he lives in New York, and he would show up in the afternoon and have lunch and record a few demos and kind of just like sit around, and he'd do his thing and I'd do my thing. I don't know. It was very chill, very calm. But super nice guy and just great energy and incredibly talented. And to be able to like listen to him kind of writing songs through a microphone was mind blowing.
And what are some things you feel like you learned from that experience that really stuck with you?
that like legendary people can be totally, totally normal. That everyone's just a person at the end of the day, and it doesn't really matter what you've done or if someone's a superstar. As people of all types of experiences can choose to be really nice or really not so nice. You know, it doesn't matter. But him specifically, I think I loved kind of listening to how his mind was working as he was writing something. That was very cool.
What's something that stood out to you about his like thinking process that you found like pretty unique?
I'd say, I mean, it was just listening to how inspiration was happening in the room. I don't know what his process really was, but like, um, you know, hearing him go in, start to play piano, and then like the melodies that would come out vocally over that, and just it was very interesting combinations. It's more like just observing a really talented person have really interesting ideas. I don't know how else to explain that. But I think that, you know, it was very impressive to see, you know, to witness someone creating at such a high level.
Yeah, it sounds like it was like a magical experience with him like playing piano and coming up with new stuff from scratch.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
because like where does this shit even come from? You know, okay, maybe he had some idea beforehand or whatever, but like when you watch people kind of give birth to something in front of you, it's very cool.
Okay. Okay. So, other than you would say, if let's say for example, you've got like a library of music you're just sampling, and based on what you hear is what you go with. Usually, when you're with a team, a lot of what you come up with is just based on what you're feeling moment to moment, and seeing how it actually plays out when you hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends what the goal is for a session. Like, you know, a lot of what I'm doing now, I'm focused on my own artist project, and I know that my own artist project is in the dance world, probably going to have some kind of a vocal on it. It's going to be something you can play at a club. It's going to be between 120 and 130 BPM. Not going to be crazy distorted or hard sounding. It's also not going to be too pretty. So you kind of have like a good idea of the energy that you want to create, and that helps to guide you. Um, and you know, so but likewise, if I'm writing for another artist, maybe it's a pop singer or something, then it's about them. It's about, okay, like what do you want to create? Like what is your vision? Then I have to like kind of make their vision a reality. It's not really just about me. It's about them. So I think it depends if I'm working for other people or if it's my own project.
Okay, got it. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense, and certainly, uh, you would know a lot more about what you want to accomplish when it's your own project versus someone else's project.
Yeah, well, it's about control too. It's like when it's my own project, I am the boss, 1,000%. And when somebody hires me to produce a song for them, and they're a singer, that's great. I have to make it happen. I'm in control of how it happens, but like I'm not really in control of how it's supposed to end up. I can guide it. It's like my vision and their vision combined. It should be a collaboration, you know.
Uh,
You know,
and when it's like your own work, it's just anything you want to do. So it's a lot.
exactly, exactly. You know, the singer wants to make a sad song that has a lot of piano and strings in it. That's kind of what we have to do. I can't suggest that we make a reggae version. You know, so
Okay,
yeah.
got it, got it. So you spent a long time working in New York for that company. When did you decide, hey, it's time for me to move on and do something different?
Yes, I was there about like 5 years, approximately 5 years, and then I quit. I quit and went freelance, and I've not looked back since.
What made you want to quit? You felt like you were ready, or the company just wasn't feeling doing it for you anymore?
Well, I wanted to be creative, and in that role at that company, I was not really. creating anything. It was like I was talking about these like big legendary people, like creating, helping them create. I was helping them create. I was capturing sounds, manipulating things, but I wasn't actually writing music. I was not actually creating music. Plus, yeah, it was quite exhausting. It's a lot of long hours, and I just kind of had enough. And so yeah, I needed the creative freedom to be able to get my creativity out into the world. So I started writing music and producing for different artists, different TV shows, etc. And that's how that evolved.
And I'm guessing you still had a lot of experience, seeing other people's creative process during your time with them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I witnessed a lot of people creating. Exactly. That's, I was witnessing people being creative rather than me myself, doing it. So that's why I was like, it's enough of that. Like I've witnessed it enough. Now I need to create.
So after the 5 years of working with them, you felt like you had enough experience to really go out there and create something for yourself.
Exactly. I mean, I could have created without that too, but yeah, I was armed with a lot of experience about gear and technical things, and I was like, okay, I've like fulfilled that part of myself. Now I need to like learn how to produce like a really sick beat in 30 minutes or whatever,
Uh,
so
so when you first started freelancing, did you meet your manager like soon after, or what was that like?
No, because I started freelancing. Basically, I quit my job here and I moved to Europe, and then
So you moved to Europe right after you quit.
Yeah, I like quit, which was actually quite it was quite a challenging thing to do. I mean, because obviously I had to build things up without really having a home base. So I started, I quit. I moved to Europe in the same like 6 months, and as a result, I started producing for a lot of different TV shows. I was writing music for a lot of I was working virtually, just like composing beats and whatever for different jobs that I could find. And then I evolved into working for artists, with artists, developed my, lyric writing and melody writing. And it was not until I moved back to New York that I met the manager.
Okay. So what made you want to go to Europe right after you left your company?
What made me want to go to Europe after I left my company? Well, my wife. Because
you met her in New York, and that's
we had just gotten married. We'd been together, and I knew that she had been wanting to go back. She's from there, and so she was like, yeah, but we could choose, either we're gonna go back together or we're gonna do a long distance thing. And I was excited about the idea of going there. I was a little nervous. Like obviously professionally it was not the best, smartest thing to do, but on a personal level it made total sense, and I made it work. No problem. So it was built a lot of character, and it was a lot of great experiences. But of course professionally, like you wouldn't just quit whatever you're doing and like move to Australia tomorrow expecting it would be easy. So
well, I feel like Europe does have a huge music scene, especially in the club world, and with house music being such a big genre over there.
It does, especially I think the UK. Well, UK also because English is, if you're not already known, and you're kind of starting out, you have to be able to speak the language with people. But yeah, the UK is a huge club scene for sure. Also Germany, Spain and Italy.
I was gonna say Germany's huge.
Yeah, Spain and Italy for sure. I mean, it's very big in the dance world. But again, I wasn't really focused on that then, so that was like it would be easier for me now. Now, if I wanted to like just pick up and go to whatever, any of those countries, yes, 1000%. It's not going to be a problem. But I'm talking back then, it was like, okay, it was a bit challenging.
Okay, so your wife was from London?
No, she's from Croatia.
Oh wow! So you
Yeah.
were in Croatia for
We were well, no, we moved to Barcelona, London,
okay.
and then Vienna. And no, she's those locations did not have to do with her background. It was different reasons that we were there, but it was all related to her being from that continent.
I find it interesting
Yeah.
you say Vienna because my dad actually went to undergrad in Vienna. And he
Oh,
tells me
no.
it's beautiful over there.
Oh, it's incredible, man. That city looks like an art gallery. It's crazy. These buildings are like 500 years old or more. They look like they were built yesterday because they keep them in such good shape. It's pretty crazy.
Uh-huh. So
Yeah.
you went to straight into Barcelona, and what
Yep.
was it like, trying to create your musical career in a whole new continent?
Yeah, it was challenging. So I basically relied on the internet because a city like Barcelona, especially, probably London would have been much easier, and that's why we ended up moving to it. But Barcelona, it's like that's kind of a tough economy. Like it's got a very high unemployment rate, so people are trying to like hire producers to produce songs for them. It's not the easiest thing to find there, or if they do want to hire you, it's very low paid. And again, I wasn't really like DJing much then, so that wasn't what I was trying to go for. I was trying to get people to hire me to like produce their records. So yeah, I relied on the internet a lot, and I started working for a number of companies that I based in the UK, based in the US, that I could just kind of produce stuff at home and sell to them. So that's what I did. That's what I focused on.
Sounds like it was a lot of like contracting work.
Yeah, exactly. I would send people different amounts of songs for different briefs, every week or every month, and then go out and enjoy Barcelona when I wasn't writing music.
Okay, okay. So that was all opportunities you found online. I thought it would
Yeah.
be from your personal connections that you built over the years.
Um, some of it, what the personal connections, have brought me a lot of things, but in the more recent years, because at the that time when I moved to Europe, I was really like shifting gear. I was shifting gears so much from what I had been doing at the studio in New York, right? It was like this very organic pop and jazz and that kind of a thing, and all of a sudden I'm like, here, like I want to produce more modern sounding music. I want to make beats, some hip hop, some pop, dance music, whatever. And that was very different worlds, very different clientele. So as I did more of that, more of the production, and I started working with artists, I've been able to build a whole new set of connections. But the connections from that very first job that we spoke about were they were very in a very different world. So that was kind of a little bit of a separate time in my career.
Okay, interesting, interesting. And what year was it when you were starting in Barcelona?
What year was it? It was um 2012, I think.
I think it's incredible that in 2012 you were able to find so many opportunities like online. Like it's
Yeah, man.
because it just makes me think now if someone wants to get into a similar industry, there are more opportunities than ever with
There's so much. Yeah. I
online.
think yeah, I think that I mean there's so many opportunities, 1,000%. I guess the downside is that there's also a lot of competition because everyone's connected and there's kind of infinite ways to connect with people and possibilities. But you have to be good enough to impress people. And as long as you can do that, you can definitely get in touch with, thousands of people, no problem.
Well, what's some advice you would give to someone who would want to get involved into that industry or who would want to do what you were doing in Europe?
I think, yeah, you have to be good, right? You have to be talented, but I think you also have to just, persevere and not give up, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. And I think, one of the things that if I could go back in time and change, I would probably I would invest more time connecting with people and building relationships. And I think that I had my head, for a while kind of just really focused on the music and creating. And I mean, that's great. It's important, but the relationships are just as important or even more important, because at the end of the day, it's who you know that really is what opens the doors. You can't, once you get the door open, you can't fail, obviously, but like,
Uh,
it's much more important to build those relationships, I think. So, people should, yeah, take those meetings, build those connections, because that's really what makes the world go round. And as long as you're not sucking at what you're trying to do, you're going to be pretty successful. I think if you can do that, 1000%.
so you feel like at the time you didn't network as much as you feel like you could have.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't personally place a ton of value on that then. And since moving back to New York, I kicked that into high gear. And, this meeting with someone like yourself, like, um, yeah, it's not to say that I wouldn't have done it some years ago. I'm sure I would have, but seeking things like that out and like connecting and bring yourself into the world, with developing your personal relationships is super important. I mean, yeah.
No, 100%. Do you feel like social media helps a lot with opening those doors for you, especially, now with TikTok making music viral, that being an opportunity for creators like you? Yeah, you're right. There is more competition, but at the same time, don't you feel like there's also more, maybe easy is not the right word, but maybe simple is a better word where you can really work on your music, post it on social media, and have that actually be heard, versus in the past you had to do more of actually talking to people before you could show them your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's social media is very, very powerful. There's no question. I also think though that, I mean, it's a good thing for music, 1000%, and people can spread their music and market it, and it's great for that. But it's, as a creative person who works with like other writers and producers all the time, I know people always complain about how draining it is, and the need, not so much like the interacting with people, but the need to create content is very draining. And pretty much every single person I know, regardless of their age, um, dislikes the amount of content that's like required to post and create. And we're trying to like create music over here,
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
and then you got to create. If you really want to, have a big social media presence, especially something like TikTok.
uh-huh.
Um, it's so time consuming to make good content. It's incredibly time consuming, and I know a lot of people who feel very drained by that. It's like you want to spend your energy creating music, not creating like TikToks.
Sure, that's
but
true.
but if you just create music, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're not really promoting yourself the way that you could be. So finding that balance, I think, is very challenging for most people that I know, that I talk to. It's like people find it very draining. So um, yeah, I think people are still navigating the best balance there.
Sure. So from the content perspective, what do you think of the idea of like, doing vlogs in general, of like, a day in the life of INVIDA, where you're just like, people get to see what your day to day looks like.
Yeah, I think that might come. That might come in the near future. I have not done it yet, but quite possible. Quite
Uh,
possible. It would be
I,
cool.
I definitely empathize with the whole idea of like making content all the time can be very challenging.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the reasons why I was very excited when I first had the idea of this podcast, because I figured there's so many musical artists, and there's so many people in the nightlife space that there's always someone to talk to.
Hmm.
That kind of simplified the content perspective. I know it's different for you, obviously, because you're a DJ, but definitely figuring out how to create that consistent content is the challenge. but once you at least have an idea, it definitely makes things a lot easier.
1000%. Yeah. And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff you can do, like how I made this song and walk people through different things. Or yeah, maybe you're playing 3 different shows in 5 days and you're showing like walking through the airport and walking up to the gig and all. Yeah, people like that. Yeah.
And I'm just curious, have you ever thought about like dropping an NFT of like one of your songs or anything like that, or no?
I have thought about that. I thought about it more probably like a year and a half ago. I knew some people who were very into that space, but at the end of the day, nobody that I was working with personally had a super strong drive to do it. So, you know, in the dance world, I'm just like cranking out songs, releasing them on labels. It was much easier just not to add that to the pile of things to think about.
No, I feel you. So there's this.
Yes.
Have you heard of OpenSea?
Yeah,
Open
sure.
So they have like a mobile app version. Where it's very simple. One of my promoters, he's an artist, like a painter, and I set it up for him for some of his art pieces. So I definitely recommend trying that out for your musical pieces, because the way OpenSea has it set up, it's very simple. Like you don't need to do any coding, you don't need to know any computer stuff. It's very much like setting up a Facebook account and like putting out a post, kind of the way they have that app set up. So, and one of the reasons why I recommend probably doing it now versus later, because when you do it when the price of Bitcoin is high, like I made a NFT just to like test it out, just to see if I can make one. Back when like the price of Bitcoin was high, and it cost me at the time like $200 or something. But my friend, when I set up the OpenSea account for him, that was when the prices were really low. It was a huge crash, so it was free for him. They didn't charge him anything.
Oh wow.
He's been posting a lot of NFTs recently, and he told me like they haven't charged him or anything like that. So the main reason why I recommend you do it now is because they won't charge you. It'll be completely free. Versus when the price of Bitcoin is high, you're gonna have to pay. It's called gas fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when the price of Bitcoin is high, the gas fees can be kind of high. Like I paid $200, I think, to post an NFT, and my artist friend, he's been posting like over 10 NFTs. He hasn't paid a dime. So it's good to have NFTs now. So when it's big, you're like, oh, I have 5 NFTs, and you don't have to work on it. You don't have to spend money out of your own pocket to make them,
right?
Because you already. So.
Yeah, make it now, like mint it now, or whatever it's called.
Or even just like just test it as like a small product, like not even a whole song, maybe like a snippet, just to see if it works.
Yeah. Very cool. Not a bad idea at all.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get as many people as possible to have NFTs, because even if it's like not something that anyone uses 5 years from now, I feel like the more people that use it in general, the more advantage we can take. Because I feel like artists are one of the huge players that can really take advantage of this. Because you don't have someone else owning your music; you own your music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah. People have told me that.
Yeah. So, okay, you're in Europe. You're in Barcelona for a little bit, and then you move to London because there's more of an opportunity for you there. What's it like being over there, staying there for a while?
But just quickly, just to interrupt you, so I am gonna have to go in probably like about 10 minutes or so.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, so then I'm definitely gonna have to do a part 2 of this, because we didn't get your DJ backstory. We've all right talking about the Europe stuff, but that's good. I'm so happy you have all these stories, because the more stories the better. So it's really interesting hearing how you were first a sound engineer. Your background with your parents. That's really cool. So there's definitely a lot here that people would love to hear about.
Awesome, very cool. Well, we'll have to do a part 2 then.
Yeah. So no, 100%, we will do a part 2. So what time you have to head out?
Yeah, like like 4. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So we'll make the next 6 minutes count. Do you have like an interesting story from in Britain before we let you go?
Oh yeah, so yeah, you asked me about being in London. Well, so I met I met this guy who became my best friend there, who we started writing a lot of music with, and he's the one who really got me interested in writing lyrics and melody. Like I hadn't ever really done that before, so I did it kind of as a hobby, but not really seriously. And he and I, um, you know, wrote top. It's called writing a top line, right? When you write like just the a cappella part of a song. So we were writing things and pitching it to different people, and we wrote a song there. It was designed to be a pop song, that ended up getting used by a DJ that's become like my most successful sort of song as a lyricist and melody writer, which kind of happened totally by accident, like because the genre that song is, it's pretty hard EDM. It's called hardstyle, the genre,
I
and
I love hardstyle EDM.
oh yeah,
You gotta send it to me after this.
maybe you know it. The song, I don't know. The song is called Warrior. It's by this guy, Robert Falcon and Mark with a K. They're from Belgium. But yeah, the thing is over like 20 million or 25 million streams.
Wow, that's
And
incredible.
yeah, and it was like this thing, we wrote it as like a piano ballad. Like it was supposed to be this like top 40 kind of piano thing, and ended up not getting used for that. And then we pitched it around to a bunch of other people. And yeah, this manager like emailed or called us one day and was like, yeah, that song, Warrior, we want to use it for this record. And we are like, okay, cool. So we had the vocal we recorded, they'd like speed it up. And then yeah, I don't know. It was just funny. I'm like not a massive hardstyle fan, and neither is my friend. And when they sent us the final version, we were like, okay, interesting. Like we had
Uh,
designed it as this kind of like melodic thing, and the actual resulting track is, obviously it's melodic, and then it gets this like aggressive hardstyle drop. And it's funny. I remember we were listening to it. We were like, yeah, I guess if you like that, it's cool. And then
uh,
it kind of like blew up, and it was pretty funny. You never know. My point is, you never know what people are gonna like and what is gonna do well. I think it's very hard for anyone to predict that.
what was your reaction like when it went viral?
I was like, damn. Yeah, my friend emailed me. He was like, damn, did you see how many streams that song has? Like, and I was like, because we hadn't really listened to it, we hadn't paid much attention to it, and I don't even know. I guess the label that they released it on must have just been pretty known, or I have no idea, but somehow it got all these streams. So like, yeah, we still talk about it because it was one of the first things that he and I ever did together also. So
Uh,
it's pretty funny.
it's actually kind of funny that you say that because I have this similar story on. So before my TikTok got taken down, I made like a bunch of like weed videos, and there was this one random weed video that actually my sister made that was less than 10 seconds. I didn't think much of it, but it was the only video that went viral, and I just thought it was so surprising how for virality you can never really guess, what people like. You just keep making
Yeah,
stuff whatever people like, they just happen to like.
exactly. Yeah, I don't know. And it's like you ask a lot of artists what their favorite thing is that they've ever written, and usually it's not the general public's favorite, and often the things that get famous are like the artist's least favorite things. It's very funny. I feel like the artists have a different perspective on what they create is different from what the general public maybe resonates with.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting from a creator's perspective.
Yeah, man.
So for the whole thing in Britain, how'd you meet the guy? It was just online. You used some of the
No, we met at like a
you were
we met at
touring.
a no, we met at a party. We were at a party. We were at someone's barbecue, and like I started chatting with this guy about music, and then he was like, "Oh, I produce music too," and then we discovered that we're both music producers.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Just random barbecue, you ended up finding this guy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, what are the odds of that? You never really know which networking event you end up meeting that one person.
exactly. That's why I'm saying you got to put the time in to connect with people, and otherwise, that's how this shit happens.
Yeah, no, hearing that now, I've got to like put more effort in my own networking because actually, for me, networking is more of like I'm very robotic about it, but it is though it is those random events where you're just like, hey, fuck it, let me go to this event, see what it's like.
Exactly.
A lot of times, those are the events where you meet that one person.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I know it's about to be 4, and you've got a lot of important stuff.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for making the time today. I wasn't sure if I would be able to catch you, but thank you so much for joining. It was great having you. Your stories are awesome. I love the energy, and I can't wait to have you back for part 2.
Thank you so much, man. Well, yeah.
Do you want to mention any of the events that you're going to have coming up, or any of your social media handles before we go?
Definitely follow me at INVIDA Music. Instagram is my preferred platform, and Spotify and everything. Check out the music, and I will be posting about upcoming shows, in the weeks ahead. So I'm not sure when this is going to air, but
I'm still working on that stuff too. But yeah, follow him at INVIDA Music. He's amazing. He's going to be at Lavo this Saturday. So if you're in New York, you've got to hear this guy perform. So,
thank you very much. Yes.
Thanks, man. I'll see you.
All right. We'll see you around.
Good luck. I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.